Hello everybody, my name is Christian Quick and welcome back to another video. Today, in the occasion of Valentine's Day, we are going to be making a type of bush crop and let's get it started into what it is. So we are going to, let's take a look at what a bush crop is. So the example I'm going to be using is a sweet berry bush block, and we can tell that it's got all this fancy stuff in it. Um, but to just kind of let's just kind of copy this, and then we're gonna paste it. We are gonna be calling this our sweet. Oh, not sweet. That's just what that's called. We're gonna be making one called bleeding heart bush. And then down here we would take the same thing, bleeding heart, ooh, heart bush. And we are going to, what kind of stuff are we going to need for this? So for this, we are going to need to look up the blocks class. And out here, we basically need what the sweet berry bush is. So we can see that it's got the, let's take from settings.of, so the .of, and we're going to stop at the first parenthesis, Control C. We're going to come into our mod blocks, and we're going to go from the .of all the way until the first parenthesis in our thing. Paste, and then there shouldn't be any issues. This is a block sound group, so it should sound just like the sweet berry bush does. Now, we are also going to need to make the class, so we're going to make a new Java class, and we are going to call this the bleeding hearts, or heart bush, um, bleeding heart bush, and then we are going to basically copy this whole thing just for now, and then we're going to change a couple things. Control C, bleeding heart bush, paste, and then we got that. We just got to change the name at the top to bleeding heart bush, and suddenly it's gone, but you can see that's not being used, so we need to make sure that we are using it. So we're going to change this to the bleeding heart bush, and now it is being used. Um, so that is practically done in the case that it is done there. But if I click on the bleeding heart bush, it looks just like the get pick stack. It's going to give me item.sweetberries when it is done growing. So we need to make a new item. So let us go in our mod items, and we are going to let's take the bagel for example. And actually, let's take let's take the golden bagel for example. And then we are going to get rid of this top one with the absorption. And we're going to make this dot one. We're going to make the hunger dot one. We are going to add something at the end here called dot snack. This will allow you to eat it earlier. This is too long for what we're trying to do. So 100 would be about 5 seconds. Let's say you got 5 seconds, or actually this would be 9. 9 is level 10, because that's how Java works. And then let's make the chance 0.5. We're also going to need to change the name here to a bleeding heart. And then here we would do the same thing to a bleeding heart. I forgot to just for fix on the last video, the sand tiller. Let's add that, and then let's add the thing we're working on here, which is the bleeding heart. So now we have an item, and we have the block, and so let's make sure the block is pulling that. So we have this would be mod items dot bleeding heart, and then over here let us look at sweetberry. Other examples: damage source is a sweetberry bush. That's perfectly fine. Item stack, sweet berries, that because it's talking about dropping a snack when we use it, we want this to be mod items dot bleeding heart. Sound events, so the stuff that sounds like the prick berries. So when you are inside of the bush, it's gonna hurt you, but it'll play that same sound. So we're not worried about the sound. And that should be everything that it looks like we need to change. Now, It's going to get a little interesting in the case of putting everything else together. Let's first try and let's make that block. And because normally I would go into DataGen and we would go into the model provider. And the problem with this, we can put the item model provider in here. This would be the bleeding heart. But for here, register cube all texture pool, we're we're not using that. And honestly, I wouldn't really know what would make a bush, so we're gonna have to do this manually. To do this, you would have to go and make a new directory called block states. And then in block states, we are gonna have to make the bush. So I am going to use my Minecraft folder here that I always have on my desktop. If you do not have that folder, that is perfectly fine. We are going to scroll down in our libraries until we see this yarn, and then we are going to go 1, 2, 3, and where it says Minecraft project, if you go in here, you'll see that it's got the assets, the .com, data, meta, and net. I always use assets, data, and net, so inside my folder, I also have assets, data, and net. If you want to get an outside source, I wonder, can I just, that was probably not the smartest thing to try and copy. I don't think I've copied, but that's perfectly fine. If you want me to show you how to get your own outsourced folder, I can show you how to do that. But as of now, we are focused on this bush. So with that in mind, we are going to go back up to where we were. So we are working on the block states. So let's go into uh, okay, assets, Minecraft, block states. Let's look at the sweet berry bush, and then we are just going to copy this in here, refactor, and then in here we are going to refactor, rename, and this whole thing is, oh, hold on, cancel, undo the move. I was supposed to copy it and it didn't copy right. And then we can call this bleeding heart bush. If you're wondering what I did, if you hit Control C, it'll copy it, but my finger must have slipped, so it actually took this out of my Minecraft folder, so I'd no longer be able to access it from there, and I don't want that. Let's take a look inside of this, and this is our block state, right? Our block state is basically pointing to the variance, so how many block states can this block be in? And it's basically talking about the age that is set in the block. So anything that has an age is going to change over time. And so this is going to basically say if the age is 0, then refer to the model 0. And so we're going to have to make a models. So here we're going to do models. And then inside our models, we are going to need a new directory called block, and then we're also going to make one called, actually we don't need an item model. So for our block model, we are going to need to make one that's basically called this. And to put all the filling inside, let's go through here. So let's go into our Minecraft, models, block, and then let's look up sweet. And then for simplicity, let's just copy all of these in here. And then we'll throw that in the back. So as I go through all these, the first thing I'm going to do, let's rename it to what we want. So we're going to call this the bleeding heart. And then let's copy the term bleeding heart because we're going to use this a lot. So now we're going to click in it, and then we are going to fix it. So bleeding heart bush, bam. And then we're going to need to change this Minecraft into HMH3. And then in here, we are going to need to refactor, rename. Sweetberry is now going to be Bleeding Heart, refactor. So right here, we're going to go into Bleeding Heart. Same thing in here, refactor, rename. Bleeding Heart, refactor. And then we can go in here, refactor, rename. And then we can go Bleeding Heart, refactor. And then make sure that I forgot to do this one. Control V, HMH3. And then same thing in here. We are going to do the Control V and then HMH3. So now our block needs a state to be in, and it's pointing out to these models. And if I look at these models, it's going to be pointing to a textures. So we are going to have to make these textures. Now we're going to have to make sure and check on the block and make sure the block is working fine. So first, what I like to do is I always like to make sure, let's just copy this for example, Control C. I want to make sure that everything is working perfectly fine, so we're going to Control V. And that now stage 0 is going to be boom block. And the idea is the boom block is going to turn into cement. Then the boom block is going to turn into our the little sand skulk sponge, and then it is going to turn into our XP block. So now we have the 4 stages. It'll turn from this, it'll then turn into this, into this, into this. So that is very visual. We should very much see it. When we make the textures, we're going to override it and throw it back in here. But for now, let's do one more thing. So these blocks don't have holes in them, but if they did, they would be black. So for example, let's actually get rid of 0 real quick. And then let me take the an item texture like the let's say like the bagel, and then let's bring it in here, Control V, and then so it's gonna try and let's see what it looks like in the world so you get an idea. Alright, here we are in the beautiful Minecraft world, and the first thing we're going to need is a grass block. We're going to place it down, and then we are going to grab our uh, bleeding heart, and you can tell that we have 2 things, the item, and then we have the block. So the item, it'll just let us eat it. If I go in survival and I try and place it, it doesn't seem like it's working. And then if I go in creative and I place it, so it lets me place the creative item. I think we're going to need to add it onto there. There's a special way to do that. And then another thing is, see how they are black? Not only that, but it's also the sweet berry bush texture. So we did a couple, it seems that we did some things wrong. So let's see if we can fix things up. And then also let's see if we can also get rid of this black stuff on the sides, because we want to be able to see through it. Welcome back into the code. And so a couple things that we need to fix. So in the block states, I put the bush in the world. The reason it was still the sweetberry bush is because I forgot to set these to the bleeding heart. So we're going to bring this back one, and then we are going to Control C, and we are going to paste, paste, and paste. And you could see how the stages were going and that little darkness stuff. So let's fix that, and we can fix that with a client. So if I go up to basically the HMH3 folder that we had made a long time ago, we are going to need a client HMH3. So it's basically the same thing, or if you wanted to call it HMH3 client, it would look cleaner like this because there's nothing else that should be going with these 2 things. But this would implement your mod initializer, client model initializer, and then you are going to need to implement an on initialize method, and then inside of here you're going to need a block render layer map dot instance dot put block, and then this is the block that we are changing. So this is our mod blocks dot, and then this would specifically be our bleeding heart bush, and then we need to render layer dot render layer dot okay get cutout, just like that. Boom. Render layer dot get cutout. And now it is it's working in this, but you can see how this is great because this is not getting used. So we need to put it in with our other client, and that is really easy. So we go into our fabric mod. We are going to take our main, and then we are going to paste. We are going to call this main, not main, but client. CLIENT client, and then HMH3 CLIENT client. And now that is taken care of. All right. And then in our bleeding heart, we're gonna rewrite this whole thing, just kind of from scratch for a moment. So we're going to need this as a new alias block item, and then we're going to need to call this for mod blocks dot the bleeding heart bush. From here, we can do the new item dot settings, and then from here we have to rewrite the thing. So the food, right, and then we are from here we should be able to copy the new food ingredient and so on. So let's control C and then new food component. And then you can see from here it worked. So we are going to do the same thing that we did earlier. Get rid of that. And then I believe that we said that we are going to do this for the 100, which is 5 seconds. Put it at 9 for level 10. And then we would put this at 0.5F. So now this points to the bleeding heart bush as the alias block item. And I believe that means that this would be able to place the item as a block. When you go into the bleeding heart bush, we are also going to make all of these HMH3. Fast way you can do this is Control F, look up Minecraft, and then select all of them, and then change them into HMH3. Alright, and here we are in our beautiful world, and we placed the bagel up, and then here you can see that there was a missing texture. So it is the second texture, but for us, because Java starts at 0, that would be considered the first texture. So there is something wrong in there. So a really good way to trace your steps, start from the block state, look at the model, and or the thing that points to the model, HMH3, Bleeding Heart Bush Stage 1, that is correct. Let us look at the block model. So we have a Bleeding Heart HMH Stage 1, and I already see the issue. This needs to be called HMH3, and that will point into our HMH folder in which it'll be pointing to this texture concrete. So now it seems as though the block is now functioning. It is placing the item as we want it to. So the only thing that we need is, well, a couple things still. But from here, we can now, that the basics are working, we need to make proper textures. Alright, so here we are back in our beautiful world again, and here we are going to compare to the sweet berries. So in my research, it is a little bit shorter than the sweet berries. You'll notice it as they grow. So here they're already in their third stage, and then they do the last growing. I like the colors that I use. They seem a little bit more off-key, and in my research, they seem to be a little bit more on the bluish side. So I wanted to try and keep the blue while also keeping it to a bush. Yeah, that is a little bit. And then every time I click on this, you'll notice I get the bleeding hearts. And if I click on it again, so there is that. So it's just like this sweet berries. No loot table required. It is already in there. So now all we have to do to finish things up is we need to just do some cleanup codes, put in lang files, and put in the item texture, and then we're done. I am going to start with the lang file because I know for a fact I am going to forget it. So, bleeding heart, and then here we have bleeding heart. So let's add the big texture. Alright, now that is all in. We got the lang file in. Let us bring in, let's go to the Gradle, and we're going to run the data gen. And the data gen is literally just for the one item. It has nothing to do with the block, so we're still running a data gen because there is an item attached to that block that we need the data gen for. But once it is processed, um, surprised it would take so long for one item, then we can just run the client and then see how everything looks. I forgot, but I wanted the hunger to be 1 and the saturation modifier to be 1, and then after for us to put it as dot snack. Snack will just allow us to eat it faster, but beyond that, this should be all good. Alright, so the first thing I want to point out is in survival, the bush itself does exist, but you also get it from the item, so you don't have to worry about the texture being missing. If you want to give it a missing texture or have that texture point to the bleeding heart, you will be perfectly fine. With that in mind, you can see that it allows me to eat faster, and I also do get the regeneration 10 for the 5 seconds that I do. So, with that in mind, that should be everything about the bleeding heart that we are going to be putting in for this video today. So if you enjoyed the video, thank you. But anyways, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, anything that you, or ideas, anything like that, kind of let me know in the comments below. But anyways, thank you guys so much for watching, and without further ado,